this issue that we do not know how that happened, but yeah, this is the magical of IT. So good morning, everybody in the room and online. So I'm going to restart my speech. So I have the honor and the privilege to introduce you to this Meet the Expert event this morning about rent or buy. But first, a few reminders. So for the people attending online, please sit comfortably and adapt the volume that you would be able to hear what is happening around you, and especially if the alarm is turning on. Also, please stay on mute. And this is it. For the people in the room, please put your mobile phone on vibration or plane mode. But just to avoid them to ring. And so in case that we need to evacuate the building, we have to follow the green board until the exit. So today, our two speakers are Piet Witsen, the company director of PR Housing. We're going to give you more details and information about the property market, which is very changing in the last few years. So we have a big gap 10 years ago, and it's evolved a lot in the last few years and months. And Stefania Amoland-Baker, sorry if I pronounce it in a thank you very much, who is going to give you more practical information about mortgages. And I forgot to specify that she's consultant for Expert Mortgages. So thank you very much, both of you, to be here. And so now I'm letting you speak.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Antonio.
you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming. Also for the people who join us on Skype, thank you very much for being here and welcome. As Antonio said, my name is Piet. I'm the director of PR Housing. I have with me today my business partner, Nathalie, and of course, Stefania and Ricardo will join later in the presentation. The purpose for the meeting today is basically, like Antonio said, the market is changing fast. People maybe are a little bit lost, don't know where the market is going to, whether it's a good time to buy, whether it's a good time to rent, basically what to do. So the purpose for me today is to give you a clear insight on what today's market is at and what we can expect. So one thing that is kind of like nice for me to know is who in the room here is looking for a rental property and who in the room is looking to buy a property. Or it's basically none of the above.
Buy.
Buy. Mostly buy. Okay, wonderful. That's good to know. You have already probably looked into buying. Maybe you have already had some viewings. Maybe you have encountered some difficulties in the bidding process, so on and so forth. Is that already where you're at or in the beginning stage? Beginning stage. Okay, wonderful. So some of the concerns that the clients that we work with have is basically we have come from a market 2008 where the prices have gone down a lot, and at the moment they are rising very fast. If you're looking at buying a property or renting a property, you will probably encounter difficulties like someone has overbid me. Where are all the properties that used to be here? I cannot find anything suitable for now. So basically, the presentation hopefully today will give you a very good understanding how the market is built up, how we got to this point, and how you can best navigate through this market. For everyone who is thinking that the market maybe is going down, for those people I have a little bit of good news and careful estimation for the next year is that the market is not going to go down, but probably we'll get a better idea throughout the presentation that a little bit more is going on than just next year for the prices to rise.
But according to whom those numbers are?
Sorry?
According to whom those numbers are?
This is published by the Volkskrant. I don't know whether you know this.
Okay.
And I think it is done with in association with the NVM Brokers Association. Yeah, good question. So the status of the current market, we're going to talk about today. How did we get there? What is important to understand the components that actually determine the market, because we have quite a lot going on at the moment. Clear understanding of today's market and how you can best navigate through. Also, Stefania is going to help us out there today. Preparation for purchasing will also be coming in your presentation. Of course, at this stage, you will join in the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, I would like to go in a little bit deeper into the rental market. If we go back into time a little bit to kind of like understand what is going on. This is a chart, it goes back to 1947, we will not go back that far, but basically if you look at this chart, two things are obvious. In principle, it's a line that steadily is going up, but at two moments in time, we can see a very strong decline in this line. And the first one dates back to 1978, 1979. There was the second oil crisis. At this moment in time, there was also a lot happening in the market. The interest rates were very high. I don't know whether some of you know that already, but the interest rates in the Netherlands, they were above 10%, actually sometimes going up to 13%. When the oil crisis came, the economy was not doing very well. Basically, the trust in the market was lost, and there was a very, very long recovery period that took about, what was it, 13 years in time to go back to the point where we were at 1978. Now, what is a little bit more interesting for you is that if we look at this point in time and we go all the way up to the next peak, this is a period which exceeds about 23 years. And that basically means that anyone who would have bought a property here would have enjoyed a climb that lasts for 23 years.
Please, just can you explain what are the terms written in Dutch for the non-Dutch speaking? Thank you.
Yeah. So what you see on this side, that is the average price for every sold property throughout the Netherlands on a yearly basis.
Okay. So the blue or green.
That is the actual price, and the orange one is the trend.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The average pricing number. The second dip in the market started in 2008. And of course, everyone remembers very well, there was a financial crisis. And basically what that meant is that the banks did not have a very solid balance, and they were not able to provide people with mortgages anymore. What happened in the market there is that the demand side basically completely or almost completely fell out. If people cannot buy properties, if there is no demand, obviously the price is going to go down up until the moment that people are stepping in and are happy to buy again. It took about 5 years for the banks to get back on top. And what you see here, at this time, the banks started to slowly give out mortgages again. And in 2008, the shortage of houses in the Netherlands was approximately 100,000 homes that we were short of. This is normal for the Netherlands that we have a shortage in housing, but 100,000 is already quite a big number. Now, what happened over the next 10 years, we're now in 2018, is that the housing shortage has doubled. We are now short of about 200,000 homes in the Netherlands. And the funny thing is that the Netherlands is not capable of building so many properties. what actually happens starting 2008 is that the housing shortage, which is 100,000, every year increases with an approximate 20,000 houses. When we are in 2020, we have almost 250,000 homes that are not there. We need that. And this chart kind of like illustrates where we are and what we are facing. The reason why I show you this is to give you a little bit of confidence in the development of the market for the next couple of years. So, the red line in this chart is the demand for houses. And of course, the Netherlands is growing, so every year we need more houses. The green line is basically the supply of houses that we have. Now, as I said, at the moment in 2018, approximately here, we have a shortage of about 200,000 homes. Now, in this estimate, it will take up to 2020 before the demand side is growing less fast, and all the way up until 2030, where it's even going to be a little bit slower. But as you can see, there is a very, very large need for houses. And what you will see in the next part of the presentation is one of the things that gives a very stable base under the market is if there is enough demand for houses. When the crisis in 2008 started, it basically happened because there was no demand anymore because people couldn't get a mortgage anymore. Yeah. For as far as the demand will be there, the housing market will probably continue to rise. The four pillars underneath the housing market I would like to look into, those are the interest rates, the inflation, the economic forecast is also important for the market development, and of course the supply and the demand. If we're going to look at the interest rates at the moment, but you can probably tell a little bit more about that. But at the moment, the interest rates are, the red line you can forget, that is an Euribor line, it's not of interest. The green line is for the 5-year interest and the blue line is for the 10-year interest, fixed. So what you can see is throughout the years, 1990, the interest rates have gone down. And this basically means, it's very simple, that if you want to have a mortgage, it is very cheap to get one. And a cheap mortgage basically means that there is more interest in buying properties than when the mortgages are very expensive. Now, one thing which is good for you to know,
Yes, I was just
sorry. I thought you were
looking at the dates, the years, so.
Yeah, okay. So this is 1988 and it goes up all the way to 2018. This is the zero line. And basically, the red line are the tariffs where banks within Europe can borrow money from one another. At the moment, it's below zero. For us, these two lines are of interest, but one of the things that you, I think, should realize that at least in the Netherlands, the average interest rate for a mortgage is about 7%. So that is this line, on average, throughout many, many, many years. So what you will see is at the moment, a mortgage is really, really very cheap. And on top of that, we have the fiscal arrangements where all the interest that you pay on your mortgage are also tax deductible. So you can almost say, well, it's not completely for free, but renting money for buying a house is almost for free at the moment. The expectations are that the interest rates are going to go up gradually, right? Yeah. Okay. So, given that, from the interest point of view, probably now is a really good time to get a mortgage and to buy a house. Going back to this chart, inflation is also a little bit of influence on the housing market. Of course, if the inflation is very high, it basically means for everyone who has some savings in the bank account is that your money start to lose its value very fast. in times of high inflation, people usually are looking for ways to make sure that their money is not losing value as fast as, for instance, in the bank. And that's the time when people usually start buying into real estate. So one of the things that we should know is that the inflation rate is at the moment going up. In 2017, it was in the Netherlands, it was 1.3%, which is really low. 2018, this year, it went up a little bit to 1.4%. For next year, 2019, it is estimated that the inflation will already be at the level of 2.5%. So that is going up quite fast. If you have any questions in between, please ask. The economic forecast, when we...
I actually do, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were going to say more about inflation or not.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you're saying that it's the inflation rate devalues money over time, so it's a good time to buy now because inflation is going up. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. For 2 points. Number one, your money loses value, but the value of the house will remain the same.
Right, for equity. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But if your equity or if the value of your house goes up, it's kind of like a big difference in the end. So the economic forecast, at the moment, things are going very well in the Netherlands. The first crisis I showed you on the chart, at that time, the forecast was not doing so well, and it took a long time for the market to recover, pick up. There was high unemployment rates, and it was not such a fancy period in time. This actually is. To give you some numbers, the GDP, that's how it's called in English, is at the moment in the Netherlands this year going up with 3.3%, which is actually really, quite dynamic. For the next coming years, this will be probably a little bit less, but there is something else going on in the Netherlands for the next 2 years. And one of the things that is going to change is the fiscal, the fiscal regime for the income tax. And it basically means that starting from 2019 or 2020, everyone who receives a salary, less tax will be deducted. So basically more net salary will be left. And that will have a really good effect on the capability for people to spend more money on mortgages. And that probably means that if more people are able to buy more, that probably the prices of real estate is going to continue to go up.
And this is the new plan of the government, yeah? Is this the plan of the new government? Yeah. And do you know the rates? Or they're not announced?
No, that is a really complicated question. Yes. But I'm sure if you ask a fiscalist, they can tell you a lot about it. Yeah. So we have the change in the fiscal policy, but we also have for the next couple of years a really substantial amount of money that's going to be invested by the Dutch government in infrastructure. A lot is going to be invested in military, and there's also a lot going to be invested in education. And the infrastructure and the education, basically, it's known that all the amount of money that is spent there, it will rather quickly come back into the economy. So the economy is doing well. Unemployment rates, I think, are now at 2.5% and going down even further. The forecast is really good. Investments from the government come on. And so this one is looking quite good. But the last point, the last pillar in the real estate market, which determines the prices, is a big one, is the supply and demand. So like I said, in 2020, 250,000 houses are needed that we are not capable between now and 2020 to build. But something else happened in roughly in 2010, a trend started where people started to move into the cities. They kind of like left the countrysides, young graduates, there is no job out in the fields, but there is in the city. So a lot of people started to move into the cities. Now, all the numbers that you have heard today, those are throughout the Netherlands. But this is a macro, how do you call it, projection. But if you zoom into the areas like the big cities, then you will see a completely different picture. And that one is this. On this chart, you will see that the average housing prices in the cities of Amsterdam, Utrecht, The Hague, and Rotterdam are developing in this line. Now, this is a little bit out of the general line that I have shown you. This is going up much faster. But one thing that I saw looking at this chart for the presentation struck me because remember that the prices of the real estate went down a lot in 2008. But if you look at the price developments of the 4 major cities in the Netherlands, this movement is actually only seen in Utrecht and Amsterdam, slightly, but The Hague and Rotterdam didn't actually suffer from the crisis at all. But they do benefit from the market picking up at the moment. So basically, having said that, if you are worried at some stage that when you buy a property in the Netherlands, that a crisis might come up, one of the things that we can learn from this chart is that if you buy a property in the city center, it is much less vulnerable when the market is going down. Yes?
So do you have any idea why The Hague and Rotterdam were not affected by the 2008 crisis?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of people are moving into the cities. And so basically, the demand that kind of like fell out of the market in general did not really happen in the cities. And I think that is the main reason why the prices held up so well.
But it did though in Amsterdam and Utrecht.
Sorry?
But it did though in Amsterdam and Utrecht. So what differentiates The Hague and Rotterdam from?
It went down a little bit, but if you remember the chart that I showed you, the prices in 2008 kind of like plummeted, I don't know, under an angle of, let's say, 45%. That is not really what we see here. To give you a little bit more numbers and percentages, at the moment in The Hague, in 2018, we have a housing shortage, the supply and demand, the difference, of 1.7%. The projection is that over the course of the next 7 years, this shortage will go up to 4.4%. That is between now and 7 years down the line. So one thing that we know is that the cities are building, they are growing, but we, even worse than throughout the rest of the Netherlands, we cannot keep up with building enough properties for the demand that there is. And the other cities, Amsterdam has a shortage now of 4.2%. In 7 years' time, it will go up a little bit to 5.2%. And Rotterdam has a shortage, low, well, okay, it's a good explanation, a shortage of 1.3%, and that will go up to 2.2%. So Rotterdam is also going to grow faster, actually, than the building sector can keep up. Hello.
Sorry for the delay.
No, it's okay. I'm happy you're here. Okay. Supply and demand. I think it's a very important element to the market today. But how does the supply and demand actually look like at the moment? It looks like this. I don't know where this is going after 2018, but one thing that we can see really clearly is that the amount of offered properties multiplied by 1,000 180,000 in, what is it, 2030, I would say. 5 years later, we have sold 60%. And that basically means that if this line will continue, it will be by far more and more and more difficult, and probably by far more and more and more expensive, to find a suitable property. So with the four indicators that we talked about, basically this one tells us, okay, better to buy now, not later. Here, I think it's the same. Economic forecast as well, and especially the supply and the demand side of the market kind of like dictates if you want to buy a property, it's better to buy it now. In a hypothetical example, a property bought in 2017, and these are the general numbers throughout the Netherlands. Let's say bought for 500,000 euros is worth, when it's bought in the beginning of 2017, at the end of 2017, it's already worth 555,000 euros. 1 year later, the property is worth 610,000 euros. And after 3 years, with the numbers that we have had since 2017, the same property is worth 670,000 euros. And that is an increase in 3 years' time, way over 30%. And those are the lines. Along those lines, I think it's safe to say that we will continue to develop, especially in the four cities. At this stage, it is probably nice to to give the word to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Waiting up until I see the screen.
This is you.
This is me. Thank you so much.
You're
Pete.
welcome.
And welcome everyone. That means it's new for me.
Stefania, can I ask a question before you
Of
go
course,
into
please.
mortgages? So you talked about 4 indicators. What about the climate change? What I hear more and more is that there is a big chance that Netherlands is going to go more and more underwater. Well,
Yeah.
they're not saying that Holland will
Disappear.
disappear, of course, but they're saying that it's going to go more and more after water, and the chances are higher and higher that we'll have to move a bit more in the inland.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, what I know about the dike protection and the dike program that we have in the Netherlands, over the past years, the investments have gone up a lot. At the moment, things are looking quite safe for, I think, at least the next 1 or 2 decades. But you do have a good point. The Netherlands, has something to worry about there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, maybe Scheveningen is not such an attractive place after all.
No, I don't think any areas in the Netherlands can be ruled out. Actually, in the event that something would go wrong there, probably The Hague is the area that is affected worst throughout the whole of the Netherlands. But there are some high-rise buildings where sometimes properties are for sale or for rent. So maybe you would like to live from the 4th floor up. I don't know.
I can't help but comment on this because if I may, because
I'm
if
from Ukraine.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's far more.
Inland.
A little bit higher. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because I bought a house last year and I've done research like probably most of you. I've been looking for a few years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people raise this that you might, for long-term investment, Holland might not be a good place, but that's just because of climate change perspective.
Yeah, maybe you need to define long-term. I don't know how long-term the advice
Well, I'm
is.
talking 40, 50 years, so for retirement more. I'm talking about more for retirement.
Yeah, no, I think along the lines of the timing, things will become more and more clear. But I doubt that the Netherlands is going to let the water win. We have a strong history of fighting against the water, and so far, except for 1953, we went a little bit bad. But apart from that, so far so good.
Yeah.
Just going to say something. So we
Sure.
plan to have at the end of the presentations, Q&A sessions.
Mhm.
The questions are already arriving. So what do you prefer, to have all the questions now during the presentations or more at the end?
We can do both, actually. It's
Okay,
for me.
because we have one question online. So if you have forecasts, so on the supply side, if you have
Yeah.
forecasts about the new building proposal, and on the demand side,
Yeah.
if you have forecast on the population growth, because population growth can also have an impact. Of
Yeah,
course, on the-
that's incorporated in the chart that I showed earlier on.
Okay,
Yeah, basically the growth of the demand in houses goes up with 85,000 per year.
mhm,
And at the moment, we are able to build 65,000 properties per year.
okay,
So the shortage grows with approximately 20,000 every year.
every year.
Every year.
Yes.
Stefania.
Thank you, Pete. And let me thank everyone here at Shell for the welcome I've been given and to give you a presentation on mortgages. And on my behalf, let me welcome you here in the beautiful city of The Hague. Oh, that's the wrong one. Before telling you all about mortgages, I thought let me first introduce myself to you. I am Stefania Ammerlaan-Beke, and I was born and raised in Leidschendam, and that's a small place adjacent to The Hague. So I kind of think I know it all. Probably not, but for the people not having a view on me right now, you see a picture of me in 1992, and I can promise you I haven't changed much. I hope so. Why did I do this? When I was asked to give a presentation, and even when people ask me, why do you do this? I always think back on my first steps at buying a property in the Netherlands. My husband and I, we thought we were done with renting and we wanted to buy, and that was 1992. And because I wanted some information, I walked into a broker's office, a mortgage broker's office, and the lady at the counter asked me, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I would really like to know all about mortgages because I plan on buying a property. Her first question was, real bold Dutch, did you already buy a property? And I was like, no, how can I? I want to know more. And then the second thing she said, you come back to me if you already bought a property. I was devastated. And you know what? We in the Netherlands, we do it the other way around, as in other countries. Before I tell you all about that, please, if the technicians are with me, I would like to start with a small YouTube video that we post on our website. Sidekicks, go ahead.
Hi, are you an expat wanting to buy Dutch property? Then here are 7 easy steps to success. Step 1, determine your budget. Find out your gross annual income, work out how much you want to spend, and schedule a meeting with us. It's free of charge. Step 2, when looking for your perfect property, you can either do it yourself on the internet or let us help you by introducing you to an estate agent, or makelaar as they're called here. Step 3, this is where the fun begins, bidding and buying. But to be honest, this is where your trusty estate agent might well come in useful. It's a jungle out there. Step 4, and this is where we at Expat Mortgages get very excited. It's the mortgage application process. We will make sure that everything goes smoothly, and don't worry, all the paperwork will be in English. Step 5, once everything has been approved, you then have to have a meeting with a notary, sign some papers, and then the keys are yours and it's time to celebrate. Woohoo! And by the way, the drinks are on us. Step 6 is arranging your taxes. For the first 2 years and free of charge, we will happily organise a tax refund for your mortgage-related costs. And the final step, we will reach out to you every year just to make sure that you are okay. But if you have any questions in the meantime, then just give us a call. Expat Mortgages makes you feel at home.
Thank you so much. Now, this is the complete process. Let me get back to my presentation again. Because what I really want to do is focus on how can you start. And what I said at the beginning, in the Netherlands, we do it the other way around as in all kinds of other countries. In the Netherlands, you cannot get a mortgage approval before you go and buy a property. And I always say the key is at the homework. when you know upfront what you're up against, and if you know what your status is, then the remaining part will be more smoothly. Now, what do I mean with that? What is something you're able to assess? If you know how the banks assess your situation, then we would know how they will go to, how the prediction can be. With banks and mortgages, there are 3 pillars. It's all about you, it's your financial situation, and it's the property. And the property is the reason why a mortgage approval is not possible. Let me tune in on that. What do I mean with who are you? Banks want you to be able to stay here in the Netherlands. So for that reason, they will check where you come from and what type of stay permit you have. Good example, Justin Bieber recently had his heart on a property in Amsterdam, a big condo. Unfortunately for me, he didn't need a mortgage. But you know what? If he bought it, he wasn't able to stay there for more than 3 months in a row because he's from Canada. Now, in your situation, either you're an EU citizen or a Dutch citizen, then you're allowed to stay here. You don't need a special permit. But for those colleagues who are from outside of the EU, you probably have this special skill, knowledge migrant. For those of you, I am able to get you a mortgage, no problems. The third one you will see is the Bureau of Credit Registration. That's all about how trustworthy are you. In the Netherlands, small loans are okay, no loans are better. And it is possible to do this check upfront, but if you don't have anything outstanding, don't worry, you will fit that box. The second one, the second pillar, and that's a very important pillar because that one demands your budget, is your financial situation. In the Netherlands, banks again do want stability, they love it. How do we get that? When you're employed, they would like you to have a permanent contract. If it's not permanent, there are solutions and I'm able to get you in there. But another important thing is banks work with euros. They want you to have your income in euros. And now I know from firsthand that not everyone here at Shell has its contract in originally euro stated. Also for those situations, we do have solutions. The other thing is your savings. When you buy a property, it is very important to know how much savings you have and how much of that is possible to bring to the bank because of your loan. And the third one, really important, are your financial obligations. Unfortunately, some people are divorced and they are up for an alimony. Please tell me, because the better I know it up front, the better I'm able to determine your budget. Or what I've been seeing is that people lease a private lease car. They think it's really smooth because you only drive a car new and all your expenses are paid off. But wait, this could throw in a curveball on your financial situation. And the third one, I told you before, this is the main reason why mortgage approval upfront is not possible. Because when you buy a property in the Netherlands, you can get up to 100% loan to value. The price you've agreed upon, the economic value, might not be the same one as valued by a valuator. For those reasons, it's very important that you take a real estate agent with you, because it is done in the Netherlands to do all the negotiations by yourselves, but you could get a nasty surprise here. Now, there are 2 really red flags to know about properties, and also for that, it's really important to have an acknowledged real estate agent with you. And that's about when you buy a property, which is an apartment, because everyone in a straight line is responsible for the outside and the maintenance of that property. And it's all coming back to you. But some of those apartment buildings don't have an active owners association. Don't let it withhold you for trying to reach out to the property, but know what you're up against, and your real estate agent would be able to help you or tell you, stay away from it because it will be a lot of trouble. The second thing is leasehold. And here in the Hague area, we do have that. What it means is that the ground you buy, the ground the house stands on, isn't yours to buy, but is owned by the municipality. And you either pay a lease for it annually, or there is a lease up in the near future. And those are things I think are very important to know up front. And trust me, your bank would like to know it as well. Well, when we've determined that, and we know what you're up against, then I always say the fun starts. What do we mean with that? We know your budget and you're up for a house. Now, something went wrong with the picture, but hey, here's here alive. So you know how he looks like. What's next? Next is you go and search your property. Of course, you can do a lot of searching on the Funda. Now be reminded, they always want the picture to be the best. So you look on Funda, you contact Pete, you go and do some research on the property itself, and then hopefully, finally, you will start having a negotiation. When that's done, and you found something, then you have a verbal agreement. Verbal agreements are also verbal agreements when done by internet or email. But what we mean with it legally is that it's a gentleman's handshake. It is still possible to breach that deal. And for you, that's important because in the Netherlands, you buy a property as it is, every flaw seen and unseen. Our big advice is please let a technical check done so you know what you're up against. When the technical check isn't what it seems to be, then breach, walk away from it. But if it turns out to be okay, then you're up for a next step, meaning the purchase contract. But hey, I told you it's not possible to buy a property without having your mortgage in place. And for that reason, you sign your purchase contract on the subject of mortgage. This is important because the bank will check you. Well, we did the pre-check, so that will not get any surprises. The bank will check your income. We did a pre-check, won't show any surprises. And Pete did his homework, so the house won't show any surprises. And then we're up for the next step. That will be the real mortgage application. Now, how do we do that? We first determine together the amount of mortgage you would need. Up to 100% loan to value, but if you have some savings, then we take another look at how much mortgage you really would need. The second thing would be the term of the mortgage. Mortgages in the Netherlands usually have a term of 30 years repayment. We do this because the tax refund is also in a maximum term of 30 years. Is it possible to decrease it? Of course it's possible, but it will affect your budget because if you repay 100,000 in 30 years, your payments are lower than when you repay it in 10 years. Interest fixed terms. Well, Pete showed us this graphic of interest going up and down, and at this moment it is really low. Your interest fixed term does not need to be the same term as the repayment of the mortgage. You could fix it for 1 year, you could fix it for 5 years, you could fix it for 10 years. Together in an individual situation, we will determine what's fitting for you, and that's the interest fix. Commonly asked question, what will happen after that time? Then the bank will come back with another offer, and you'd be free to look into any mortgage at any other supplier if that is applicable. Kind of mortgage. Well, since 2013, our credit crisis, I always say we only have one type, and that's the repayment type. But the repayment scheme, for that you can choose. You could either say, I'm going to repay it straight line, I divide my loan into the years I'm going to repay it, and add the interest I owe, or we do it at an annuity scheme. In that type of scheme, you start paying a little bit less at the beginning, but you do have some catching up at the end. Both types do give you a tax refund at the end. And of course, now we've determined the amount, we've determined the term of repayment, we've determined your interest fixed period, the type of loan, but what about the family at home? What if something would happen to you? You'd come to disease. What are your risks? For that we're going to check as well, and we advise you, or you yourself would like to have an extra coverage for a life insurance. All that done, we will submit the mortgage to the bank, and we at Expert Mortgages make sure that it's going to be as smooth as possible and make sure that we check every document and help you out with that. Having that said, mortgage is in place. Now what about the taxes? In the Netherlands, houses are still stimulated. And we do that by giving you a rebate on everything that is involving the finance of the property. That means the interest on your mortgage, but also the costs for an advisor and evaluation. And what we indeed do is help you out on the refund you can collect each month or totally at the end. I always say it starts with doing some good homework, because then we can assess and establish your individual situation. And for that, I would like to invite you to make a personal appointment. Thank you so much for your attention. Oh, sorry, any questions?
So thank you very much. Before there are any questions, I would like to do a disclaimer, because buying or renting a house is an important decision.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for those presentation, for those facts that you introduce us, those provisions, but there are provisions and expectations. So at any moment, is Shell or Outpost not recommending to buy or to rent? I mean, this is a presentation done by professional. They can advise you, but this presentation, the only goal is to give you information about the property market and not pushing you in one situation or the other one. It's just to be clear about that. And I think that everybody knows the position about Shell, especially for the long-term assessment about buying or renting a property. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, thank you so much indeed.
So I don't know if you have more questions. Is there any questions about the property market or about mortgages?
Can you just clarify on the tax rebates that you quickly covered at the end? You get them for both realtor fees and other parts
Everything, every payment or every fee you have that is because you get a finance, that's tax deductible. So you can roughly break the cost into two. You have the cost for the transfer of the property on your name. Those costs are transfer tax, a notary for registering the house in your name, sometimes a bank guarantee, and the real estate agent. Those make sure you obtain the property. And then you have the cost for getting a mortgage. That will be the mortgage advisor or the bank's fees, or the advice fee, the interest rate you pay on your mortgage, valuation report, the notary for the mortgage deed. And because you are non-native speakers here, the notary will invite an interpreter. And the cost for the interpreter relating to the finance, those are tax deductible as well. Was that clear?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Most of the notaries in The Hague, by the way, they don't require a translator to be present, because they can actually explain the whole deed in English. So that saves about, I would say, 200 euros.
So we have online a question.
Yeah, please.
It's a bit about mortgage and tax.
Throw
so
them
about
at me.
internationally commute. So for example, for tax resident in the UK, but working in the Netherlands, if they can have a mortgage.
Yes, they can.
Yes.
Yeah, because they have two challenges.
Yes.
They don't pay taxes here in the Netherlands. Normally, a rule of thumb of the budget you can have on your income is you could loan up to 5 times your income. When you're non-taxable in the Netherlands, it's about 4 times your income. And he is especially mentioning, or she, UK. That gives me the idea, hey, your income isn't in euros, but in pounds. So it is possible, a little bit more homework.
Okay. And so that person, of course, assume that she or he wouldn't get the tax rebate.
Yeah, because when you don't pay it, you don't have to claim anything in return.
Yes, I have also a question.
Yeah.
You say that normally a mortgage is for 30 years, and yeah, that's fine if you are below your 40s.
Yeah.
But if you are in the 40s, 50s, how it works? Do you then have some problems with the bank? Or?
When you're reaching retirement within a 10-year scheme, then the banks would like to work with the income of retirement.
Okay.
When retirement isn't there yet, within 10 years, then it's all up to us to determine, are the payments after 10 years still fit for your income, or do you have other plans? Because you already made this step to go to the Netherlands, to another country, and learn about. Might as well be that when you retire, you'd think, let's search for somewhere warm like the southern of Europe. Then you'd sell your property and don't have these costs. So basically, can you get a mortgage with a term of 30 years repayment when you're below 57? Yes, that is possible. It will be in an individual situation, whether it's advisable or how to approach it. Yeah.
What happens, like, for example, you buy a property, intention is to have that as a family home, but then during your career or over the course of 10, 15 years, you might go abroad.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in those instances? Is it possible to rent out the property? Because I've heard very different things. Some say, also some real estate agent, well, don't worry, you and regardless of if you intend to come back or not, it's possible to have something here and not have the intention to come back over the next 10, 15 years. Does that make a difference in terms of renting out, or is that?
Yes, it does. And let me clarify these gray areas. In the Netherlands, when you buy something, you're the legal owner and you're entitled to do with it whatever you would be pleased to. So if you want to rent out, then that's the first step for you. Do I want and am I able to? Yes, you are a legal owner. Second thing to know, when you have a mortgage, in all mortgage deeds in the Netherlands, there is this clause, renting out without approval of the bank is not possible. So that's the contradiction. Coming to your story, what if I'm being put to an assignment? If it's a temporary assignment and we can prove that to the bank, and if you have a renter and someone in between who makes sure that the persons that go into the property are well looked after and that it can be given notice within a good time frame, then there is no risk, and yes, you're able to get approval. What in the situation that you'd go to Brazil because Shell needs you there, and you decide you're going to work with Heinz instead of Shell, and that you'd never come back to the Netherlands, then the banks have a problem with you. Because what if you don't pay your mortgage anymore, and the interest of the property for you is becoming some totally different than when it was the property you will want to go back to? In those situations, it's totally up to your individual situation whether the bank would say, I approve or I don't approve. And to give you some more ideas on what do they look at is, what is your track record? How much loan to value do you have? Who is renting it? How much rent is coming back? So those are more details, and the more detailed it is, the more firm and vague anything will be that the bank would say, I allow you or I don't. And now coming back completely to Shell, within some banks, Shell, they know Shell employees, and they will say, we're far more likely to give you this approval of rent instead of banks that don't know employees by Shell. Does that give you?
Yes, I spoke to a bank on that specific situation, and they said, basically, we don't care. You can go abroad, you can do whatever you want, and if you stay liquid enough, we don't bother as long as you pay your
they do this.
Yes, but they also said, but we don't put any restrictions on you. It will be the gemeente.
Yeah.
So they can put a blocker on you when you move abroad, and you don't get a certification or a confirmation to say, well, this lady is coming back here in the soon term. They could say, well, we can impose a maximum rent on you, for example, that you could get for your property.
Yeah.
So it's a bit. So right now it's different statements from depending who you ask, which makes it quite uncertain.
Yeah. The real reason why they all are vague is as soon as a bank knows that you have a renter in it, and they didn't do anything about it, then they approve. And when they approve, they're not entitled to kick out the renter when you're not paying your mortgage. That's legally not obliged. And that's a strong reason why the banks put in this deed in their mortgage deed, not allowed unless. And as long as the bank doesn't know or does this, and as long as you're paying your mortgage, then the bank holds this one-time opportunity that the moment they find out that there is a renter in the house, that they can kick out that renter. Yeah.
We have another question.
Yeah,
online.
please. Yeah.
Still on mortgages. So when write to us, assume that the bank want also to know about mortgages that you have in another country.
Yes.
And if you have a family home in another country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is any mortgage on this will count against your affordability and lending cap?
Yeah. Yes, they do. In some countries, there is this real firm communication between banks. For instance, if people come from Germany, Austria, Italy, or Belgium, then it's known. Banks check that, and every loan outstanding does indeed have a huge effect on your financial situations. If it's a property anywhere else, and if you're getting rent from it, then it's within a good conversation on your individual basis. Is this a good thing to go for you? Because then we check, how long is the rent coming? Does it cover your mortgage? Yes, please. Does it cover your mortgage? Anything else? Yeah.
Okay. Is there another question in the room? I have a question for you, Pete. So about the property market. So explain to us that there is a lot of demand and short supply for properties in the city centers, in the big centers. So you show us the graphic with the 4 main Dutch cities.
Yeah.
Because is there a difference between so in those cities between the type of properties? So I mean, is there a higher demand for apartments, for houses? How is the market related to those types?
Yeah. That is a very good question, and that is indeed something that every individual should think about, because how do you call it, the demographics? So let's say you are looking for a family home around the international school. You can be sure that around the summer period you will have a lot of competition, because in the summer period a lot of families move into the areas where the international schools are. You also know that in the city centers, usually there's more supply anyway, but also a greater demand for apartments. Like, let's say, the young professionals, they do not need to live in a family home somewhere near the international school, away from the city center, but they would like to live close into the city center, and an apartment for them will suffice, rather than to have a whole family home with a driveway and a garage and so on and so forth. So yeah, indeed, depending on the housing need that you have, there are things to definitely to consider there. Yeah.
Every location, so in some locations there might be a higher demand for houses, obviously close to an international school, because if you're going to the city center, maybe it's easier to find a house, but more difficult to find an apartment.
Yeah, correct. For instance, looking at the Bezuidenhout area, where you have the British school, there are a lot of apartments, but there are not many family homes, and that's a good example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Not any more questions. So checking your last time online.
But we're going to talk about rental, right? The rental market.
Yeah, indeed. In the beginning of the presentation, I asked who's going to look into buying an apartment, and I only saw hands for buying, not so much for renting. But I assume you would like to know something about the rental market then.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the lady. So if I have to rent it out, I want to know what my rights are, because I've heard that people who rent out flats are very much protected in the Netherlands.
Yeah, they are.
So if you can tell more about that, so what it takes to rent out a flat, and what checks you need to do before you're renting it out.
Basically, first of all, as discussed, the mortgage need to officially approve, or at least allow you to rent out your property to a tenant. But indeed, the rights of the tenants in the Netherlands are really strong, And one of the things that you can face renting out to, for instance, a Dutch person, is that they are looking for a rental property for many, many more years to come. Basically, if they were in the position to buy, usually people buy. So people are not able to buy, they rent it. They do it for a long, long, long time. And the situation that I know from the clients that I have helped buying a house and later on rented it out, is that they are not really interested in renting it out for a very long time because they never know what's going to happen in their situation. You have a mission abroad, you might come back, or you might want to sell it on, or if the market goes down, it's not nice to have a tenant that's going to sit there for 20 years and for you waiting to ride out what's going to happen to the market. Basically, it is a matter of determining what type of tenant would suit your needs as a homeowner, and then trying with your realtor to find the tenant that best suits the combined then interest that the tenant has and the homeowner has. Yeah, but that's the job of your realtor, and that will probably vary from every homeowner individually.
Yeah, and is that possible to put in a contract that you every 2 or 3 years we come back whether we extend the contract? Is this legal?
No, it's not. It's not.
So yeah, so if you rent it out, the first year both can pull out, but afterwards it's permanent and you can't kick the person out.
There are 2 types of contracts, and one is a contract which is for an indefinite amount of time, with usually a minimum term of 12 months. The other one is an undefined period of time, and that has a maximum duration of 2 years. So you only have those contracts.
Okay, so if you are to go abroad on assignment, you can just rent it out for 2 years and then revisit it, right?
No, because if you revise it, then it becomes a contract for an indefinite amount of time.
Oh, so you can only revise it one time?
It depends on the duration. So a temporary contract cannot be extended for being then a contract for an indefinite period of time. And the maximum duration of this first contract is set at 2 years.
All right.
So hypothetically, you have a contract temporary for 1 year, it then ends. It basically means that if you want a tenant to go, they have to go. But if you say, let's renew the contract, it's basically very similar to the employment contracts that we know in the Netherlands. It's officially by law, even if you say, okay, let's make another temporary lease agreement for another year, by law, it becomes a contract for an indefinite period.
And what do people do when they come back? So if they had to leave and then they come back in 5 years, but there is a tenant there, what do they normally do?
Usually you get in touch with the tenant, but the best thing to do is already upfront discuss the situation. Look, I have a mission that takes me abroad for 5 years. I'm very happy to rent out my home to you for 5 years. If you rent it out to an expat, the chances are very big that this expat is also not going to stay there for much longer than 5 years. In that case, you might have a good match. But in the event that the tenant says, you know what, I like it so much in your apartment, I would like to stay here forever, there isn't anything you can do.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. How the Dutch judges look at the balance between the capitalist homeowners and the poor tenants, they kind of like protect the interest of the tenants. There is basically a way out if you can prove to the judge. Okay, let's say the tenant approves. Okay, I want to go out. Okay, then it's clear. But if the tenant says no, I would like to stay, then you can go to the judge and you can claim, look, I really, really need to have my property back for these and these and these stakeholding reasons. And if the judge then agrees with you, I don't know, can be hopefully I will find a reason whilst talking to you. But if the judge is convinced that it's critical for you to go back to your property rather than to receive the rent from your tenant and with that money rent something else yourself, if you can convince the judge, then he will close the lease agreement. But those chances are very slim.
Okay, so pretty much it would be better to rent out to an expert if you are an expert yourself.
Yeah, if those situations match, I would say yes. Yeah.
And what would your rights as a homeowner be in that example, for example? So I decide to sell my property while somebody is renting it.
Yeah, officially, you have to sell it with a sitting tenant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that will of course affect the value of the property.
Yeah.
Unless the tenant is paying a lot of money and everyone is happy to take over the house with the tenant. But, yeah.
And regarding first house and the second house, is the taxation the same or?
Referring to the rental contract or to the mortgage situation?
About buying, for example, my first house and or buying a second house.
Yeah.
Maybe you're talking the tax that you pay on the value of the house.
Yeah. So is the taxation the same or different?
No, because only your first house is tax deductible, not your second house.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I rent it out to a different person second year, then I can still have it for 1 year, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is per tenant.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a question, and it's true that it's just about the theme of the event.
Yeah.
So what are the trade-offs of renting versus buying in the Netherlands? So what is the tipping points in terms of length of stay? So I think, this is the main thing.
This is actually a very good question.
Yeah.
Basically, what we see, and it's also within Shell actually, is that more and more people are coming to work here on a local non-national term. I don't know whether the contracts are in place in the room. Basically, what happens is expat terms, they provide you with a package for a lease amount. But if you're on local non-national terms, you have to pay, as far as I know, for all the LNN contracts, you have to pay it for yourself. Now, it is really clear that the leases in The Hague are quite steep, not compared to other cities like London or Paris or whatever, but The Hague is already becoming quite expensive. So if you have on one side, you have a lot of money that you need to pay for the rent of your apartment, you're not getting anything back. Basically, the rent is going up every year. Versus you have an income, you pay income tax in the Netherlands, probably the 30% ruling, but you're able to buy a house that will hopefully grow in value, where you can also have a tax advantage for the mortgage interest that you're paying, for as long as you are confident that the market is going up rather than going down, it is likely more interesting financially to buy a property in The Hague. Because after a couple of years, if you go to your next mission, you can either decide to rent out your property that you bought in The Hague, or you can sell it and without paying any big capital gain taxes, you can just take the profit and move on to the next country.
What is the period of this capital gain profit? Is there a holding period of 3, 7, 10 years?
No, there is none. There is none. It's once per year you have to pay the capital gain tax. So every year that your property increases in value, the capital gain tax goes up a little bit. But after you sell the property, you take the profit, and there is no tax charges on it.
Okay.
No more questions online. We have another question. About renting, most people looking for rent and not renting the property. It's quite well known, but landlords are looking for expats because they can pay more, and so they can ask for higher rent. Do you have any tip to try to avoid this kind of expat market and to have more a reasonable price for somebody from here, for a local?
There is a little bit of a trade-off though, because there are basically 3 types of properties that you can rent. The one at the most expensive area of the spectrum is the fully furnished properties. Basically, it means you can move in, you have your clothes, your suitcase, you don't have to pay anything except for the rent and your utility usage. If you rent a property unfurnished, the same property, it's already quite a bit cheaper. That is what most expats do. If they are either traveling with their furniture or they can buy something at IKEA or from colleagues who are leaving. The third option, and that is what most Dutch people do, is not really, there's no premium for expats. It's basically the type of properties that they're interested in varies. You can rent a property that is partly furnished. It's a confusing term, but partly furnished basically means that there is no flooring, there are no curtains, sometimes there's not too much equipment. So a very bare apartment is much cheaper than one which is fully utilized with flooring and so on and so forth. And that is what most Dutch people do because, as I said before, they rent for a long time. So it's better for them to start at a very low price, invest some money for flooring, curtains, light fixtures and so on, but keep the rent low for a long time, rather than to have for a very long time pay for all the nice amenities that are in the apartment. So if expats are looking for a long stay, for a long rental, then probably the best thing to do is to look for a property that is without any flooring, without any curtains, because those are the cheapest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So we talked a lot about we talked about a lot about costs, but what are the buying and selling costs to consider, or maybe the main costs that you can have?
I'd be pleased to answer that. The main costs were what I told you before. You have the costs regarding the transfer of the property, and you have the costs regarding the finances of the property. In general, you could say it's about 4%. The costs when the transfer of the house, you need to consider 2% transfer tax. That's a percentage. And the cost of the notary for the transfer deed, in general, per deed, €800. That's a flat fee. The real estate agent, he also charges a percentage of the property you buy. The fees for the finance, those are all flat fees. And giving a real general term, you need to consider those as €5,000 when buying. So in general, when you buy a property of €300,000, your general costs could be between €15,000 and €20,000. And those are the costs you need to bring with own means, and those aren't able to loan.
In terms of investment, what would be, according to your point, the best countries to buy houses in the EU?
No, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. If you would ask this question, which areas of the Netherlands are the best areas to invest in? I've already explained a little bit in the presentation. That's a question I could roughly answer, but you have to consider that buying a property, for instance, in this street can be very beneficial, but if you buy one around the corner, it might not be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really difficult to give a general answer to that question. Yeah.
You talked a lot about how the city properties have gone up in value and there's a density in the city populations. How about just outside the city limits, like if one were to consider buying a sort of less central, more rural property that's not too far of a commute. Is that common? Is it cheaper if you're considering that?
It's considerably cheaper. Yeah.
And like, is it? I mean, you see a lot of nice little farming properties and so on and so forth. Like, is it just tiny little properties that you're looking at, or is there a lot in the way of like, I don't know how to describe this, but essentially, like, are you looking at? I don't know. I can't really frame the question, but
okay, no worries. But basically, I think what it comes down to is first prioritize what your housing needs are, then looking at your budget, see if you need to make any compromises in size or in location, and basically go down the line like that. But if you need any help, there are a lot of people who will be happy to help you there. Yeah.
Any taxes that you need to pay on your house? Like I know that in France, in the UK, for example, every year you need to pay the council tax.
Yeah, the same applies here in The Hague. Yeah.
How much is it calculated?
It's calculated. It's a fixed rate. Anywhere you live in The Hague, you will face the same charges. So it doesn't matter the size of the apartment or when you are renting here or in the penthouse of New Babylon, you will have the same municipal charges. But when you own a property, then there is also a tax related to owning the property, and that varies from house to house.
Is that a different one than the capital gain tax you mentioned?
Yeah, that's different.
Okay, so
Yeah.
two different ones. So
Yeah.
the municipality one and the capital.
Yeah.
Understood that there is a tax deduction for your first house.
Yes.
So if you have another house in another country, so you cannot ask for this, or you can also ask for this deduction because it's your first house here.
Yeah, this part was just covered, but no, it's okay. Basically, the country where you pay your taxes, there are the chances for you to reclaim taxes if applicable. Yeah. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Other questions online? We don't have any other questions, so thank you for the session. Just going to remind you the next events that we have with Outpost. So the next evening with the traditional Chinese medicine. There is a visit of the ICC. A welcome morning for the newcomers, and there is historic Canal Boat Trip with us on the 12th of July. Receive by email online feedback form. Please, if you can reply to that. It just takes 2 minutes, and it's very important for us to know how you enjoy this event. And there are a few questions also for future events, so it's very important for us. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope you have